I'm gonna need my glasses for this. Okay, so thank you guys for taking the time today to go through this presentation with us. We are super thrilled to be talking about the market. All the data that you're going to see, by the way, although, of course, we are tech systems, we are pulling it from a bunch of different sources, and it's all national data as well as data that is based in Raleigh-Durham. So to clarify, there are going to be a lot of different sections where you're going to get to have the ability to see just the different markets and how they kind of compare. All right, so my name is Monica Albuerne. I'm a risk and security account manager and recruiter lead at Tech Systems. I've been with Tech Systems for a little over 5 years, and I really lead our security vertical for the Raleigh market, which is why Alyssa and I are so excited to be here today.
Hey guys, my name is Alyssa. I am a risk and security recruiter with Tech Systems. I've been here for almost a year now, which is crazy, time flies. So basically my goal is to partner with people like yourself, security professionals, to find them valuable opportunities in Raleigh and even nationally. I actually recently just placed 2 females in really exciting security roles. So I'm very excited to get the chance to speak with you guys. I know Monica and I are really looking forward to share a lot of hopeful and exciting market trends that we're seeing, just to show you how booming the security space really is. So looking forward to it.
So the first thing that we wanted to go through is, what do we do as a company, right? And just to give you guys a little bit of scope. So at Tech Systems, we are the nation's leading IT staffing and services company. We service over 80% of Fortune 500 companies. From a security standpoint, it's definitely one of our fastest growing verticals. We have security partnerships to be able to work with different clients like SailPoint, Beyond Trust, AWS, Data 443, that allow us to really deliver to our customers. So in terms of just data alone, we are really, really large. So we're able to provide a lot of great information in terms of the clients we support, things like that as well. So if you do have any questions, feel free to ask us at the end and we can answer some questions for you. All right.
All right. So I think a lot of the biggest question that we're wondering with the new year coming and with everything with COVID that's been going on, like how has COVID impacted the IT market? So we have this graph here which shows us the unemployment rates in the US in terms of overall unemployment compared to IT unemployment. So you'll see the darker line is overall unemployment. Clearly there's a really large increase around April, and it's still down 6.3%. But then when you look at the IT unemployment rate, we started at 3% in January of 2020. We had a little bit of unemployment increase throughout the year. But as you can see, in January of 2021, we're down 2.4%, which is something I think is really cool because we actually were negative unemployment from the year of 2020, January 2020 to 2021. So I think, that is really interesting and really exciting because we were able to not only recover from COVID and everything, but, continue to decrease the unemployment rate.
Mm-hmm. One thing to also mention is when you look at unemployment rates that are that low, like a 2.4%, that's basically frictional unemployment. So it's people from moving from one job to another in the week or two that it takes for them in terms of like the time that they take off in between jobs. So that does include that piece, which is a big aspect of this. All right. So the biggest piece that I think is really important to note is demand continues to outpace the supply. And that's for a lot of different reasons. So some of the biggest reasons are actually very security oriented, and it's just a matter of risk, right? So there are companies that are trying to meet new technological needs. Preparing for the next disaster is one of the largest ones that we hear about right now, because from a business continuity perspective, a lot of organizations weren't prepared at the time to move to a fully remote structure or to encounter as many organizational changes as they had to in 2020. So it's making people really reevaluate their standards at this time. Another piece that we always hear about is keeping up with the technology. Within the security space alone, the security landscape is increasing, the threat landscape is increasing year after year, day after day. So keeping up with that alone is a full-time job. and a full-time job for organizations in an area that's growing in importance year after year. Lack of domestic tech talent is a really, really big piece that we're going to talk about in this presentation because we are not producing nearly enough people to meet growing demand. And we'll also talk through some of the struggles of just somebody new coming into IT in terms of what you would face. Because I know that that's something, especially if you're emerging into this IT space, that is a really hard thing to overcome right now.
So to kind of piggyback off of that, this is a graph that shows the next decade. So it looks like IT jobs are projected to grow twice the national rate over the next 10 years, which is really exciting. So obviously here we see that the demand is increasing, but we're also seeing that the talent is still very scarce for multiple reasons. So one of the biggest reasons is, like Monica said, there's less IT talent. Though the big part of it is that in the last 10 years, we've seen an increased graduation rate. If you look at healthcare, it's gone up 168%, biomedical science, it's gone up 67%, engineering 51%, but computer science has increased 10%. So yes, we're increasing, but at that rate, it's not going to be substantial enough to meet the demand that we're going to foresee in the future. And then another reason why IT talent is scarce is because only 59% of all computer science graduates that report working in a job that is closely related to their degree. So I kind of wanted to ask the audience if anyone knows or has an idea of why that might be, why only 59% of those graduates are actually working what their degree related to. And you could type in the chat or speak out loud, whatever's easier. Any guesses?
Hi, I'm a friend of Barbara's, and I'm just wondering if that is because the applicant tracking systems have made it so difficult to get through when you're applying for a job.
Yeah. Oh, do you want to say something, Monica?
No, I would say that that's definitely a factor of it. We have seen that there has been an increase in frustration from a hiring manager and from a consultant, like from a tech professional perspective, just due to the increase of use of technology in the hiring process. And a big part of that is, the search for keywords specifically, which makes it pretty difficult to be able to pass through just that first round. So I definitely agree with that portion as well. Does anybody else have any other ideas?
Yeah, I'm seeing some comments in the chat.
I don't think I can see the chat.
There are a lot of non-tech people applying for technical jobs just because some of their degrees, say like health sciences, sports sciences or something like that. The jobs don't pay what IT jobs pay. So
You make a very solid point. Anybody else?
Some of them could be women who end up staying at home and don't go back into the workforce. I don't know if that would be the whole 41%, but some of it could be.
You make a very valid point. That is something that we have to weigh as well.
I had a
I was
question.
also wondering if, like,
go ahead.
I was also wondering if some of the engineering graduates would be in the computer science jobs, because a lot of times you've got like software engineering, which is basically computer science. So there might be like a kind of like a blur there between the engineering and computer science jobs.
Sure, absolutely.
I have a question. What did you consider all other?
So these are different fields that weren't large enough categories to make them their own. So that's typically what all other means in this respect. So I'll give you an example of that. Like, so mainframe engineers is a good example of that. Like, we see them occasionally, but they're not as common in the IT market anymore. They're more of a specialized skill set that really doesn't get their own category.
Is that 59% the same for engineering as it is computer science? Because I was wondering about like women, and this may be less of a factor now, but traditionally, like when women go into a male-dominated field, a lot of times they're uncomfortable and they may like be pushed out just because they're a minority and because they're uncomfortable being the only female in the entire group, and they may not be treated fairly.
That's a great question. I know that our data tries to separate as much as possible, like the computer-related skill sets and the ones that would encompass that or overlap with that space. But you do make a really good point that, you know, there would probably be that discrepancy.
Like I worked next to a girl 2 years ago who was a few years older than me, and she told me that she was a computer science graduate. Her first computer science job out of university, she was working in a place where there were no other women in computer science. And so she was doing mainframe computer science programming, and they put her in a cubicles with all the administrative secretaries. They didn't put her in with the men doing the computer science, but because she was a woman, they stuck her in the secretarial pool.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm Laura, and I'm also a friend of Barbara's, and I just wanted to say that I worked in software QA for a long time, and I never, ever had an experience that I was treated any differently because I was female. And I worked as a contractor, sometimes through tech systems, actually, and through corporate. So I never, ever had that experience.
But you're in QA. You're not a developer, right? QA is a little bit different, in my experience.
Right, but I did work around a lot of women in development, and they seem to have a very positive experience also.
Well, that's good. That's good to hear. Yeah, so things may have gotten better than my neighbor who, 30 years ago was in the secretarial pool as a programmer.
And that's honestly what we hope for in the future. I mean, that is the goal, right? If we can have more of a representation in terms of the population, hopefully other women that enter this space will encounter the same thing as other women have. So just making this world a little bit of a better place for women to be in general is a big goal of ours. Liz, can you go through what our reasoning is behind the statistic?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think some people actually had the answer in the group chat, and pretty much everyone's answers are correct. I mean, there's so many factors and reasons why this is the case, but the main factor is that hiring managers are looking for IT talent with a minimum number of years of experience in a related position. So there's computer science graduates that graduate right out of college and are looking for an IT level job, and they just can't land a position because there's 2 to 3 to 4 years of requirement of work experience that, that just kind of takes them out of the pool. So we find that those graduates tend to maybe go somewhere else, work somewhere else that's unrelated just because they need to get a job out of school and make money.
It's a big factor. A lot of jobs require 2 to 4 years of experience or 1 to 3 years of experience, and that's really tough to get when you don't have any experience. So it's that starting field can oftentimes be really unrelated, and some people just don't even go down the path at all. Right. So I want you to take a look at these IT talent pools and some of these numbers here. So what I want you to keep in mind is the way that this data is classified right here. It's all grouped into different job categories. So the information security analyst job title is really the most general job title, within this space. And so that's how the security related industries are all wrapped in here in terms of the IT pool. So I knew there'd be some questions around that. But as you can see in the United States, right, there's 115,000 professionals that are currently working today that are in this field, right? In Raleigh, there's about 1,900 people in the security space that work day in and day out in this area.
So this is probably Monica and I's favorite slide. I think it's going to drive a lot of discussion. So essentially what we're seeing here is a table that's, basically showing that the demand is really, really much larger than the supply that we have here in the Raleigh area in the InfoSec industry. So if we look at the Raleigh market, we see that 589 employers are competing for talent within InfoSec. And then in the past 12 months, there has been almost 4,000 job postings for those employers looking for InfoSec talent. And then when you go to talent supply in the Raleigh area, there's only 1,900 people that are working in InfoSec. So the way I kind of think about that is if all 1,900 of those individuals were looking for or open to opportunities, looking for new positions, then as an employer at that company, you'd have a 48% chance of actually filling the role. And in reality, 80% of people are open to opportunities. So we're really not producing enough people in the space, in the market. And then some other statistics that I want to mention are how often are people changing jobs in the IT market? We see that that's every 18 to 24 months on average. And then as it relates to job postings, when you have a job posting open, the average job posting is open for 55 days. So with all of those statistics together, I'll leave you at this. How much work is not getting done while these job postings are open? Time is money always. So, something that Monica and I like to say is as a cyber attacker, you only have to be right once. And as a defender, you have to be right every single time. So I think this graph is really cool. If anyone has any comments or, questions about it, please let us know.
So are you saying there's 1,900 jobs that are filled in the Raleigh-Durham area?
Correct.
Okay, wow.
Yes.
Amazing.
It's incredible to see like just the need within the security space and how it's increased so dramatically. And I think it's a big part of it is people realizing that security is so important. It's not just an IT function, it's a function of the business. So we will be seeing more opportunities in this space as people continue to build out their environments, their teams to be able to really positively impact this space. One of the things that I absolutely love about this slide and I'm looking at is, and it makes me feel really optimistic, especially if I'm getting into this space for the first time, is there are 589 companies that are currently looking to hire people in these spaces, which is really, really nice to hear. And Raleigh is one of the most diverse areas in terms of companies. So there's a lot of different employers that are looking to hire these professionals. So any comments or questions that I can answer right now?
I think there are a few questions that came up. How much is certifications emphasized when hiring versus degree? I think you'll talk about that a bit.
We will.
What employers are looking. So I think you will again talk about that, I know.
Yes, we are. Okay. All great questions. So this is another piece that we wanted to definitely include, which is the gender gap, of course. So as you can see, the gender gap in the Raleigh-Durham area and in the US in general, they're both very, very similar. And what we see here is about 21 to 22% of the security market consists of females that are currently working. So we have a lot of work to do, in other words, which we're excited to be able to help with in the future. But let us know if you have any questions about this side. I don't think that this is very surprising for people, but let me know if this is.
I'm really interested to see like a trend, because I know within the last 3, 4, 5 years, it's been 20-ish% of women in cyber. So I would be curious, because obviously it was way less than that 20 years ago, but I would be really interested to see like what that trend is over time, especially going forward.
Oh yeah, I totally agree with you. All right. Let's see. So these are the types of companies right now that are hiring and competing for InfoSec talent right now. So we picked these particular companies because these are some of the ones that have the most number of job postings within this space and have had the most number of job postings consistently over the last 12 months. So there are some trends that I think are really important to note within these employers. So we see a lot of healthcare companies We see a lot of financial services and investment organizations. We see some pharma in here. And what I think is really important to note is those are all really high compliance environments. And those are the environments that really have the most sensitive data. You'll also see that there are some government entities too. Raytheon's a large one as well, to note in here. Did any companies on this list surprise you? I'm going to have some stuff in the chat. None at all? Let's see. I would think so too. But like I said here, we have a lot of large organizations, but I think in the upcoming months, we're probably going to see some of these smaller companies start to compete in this arena more, just based off of some of the conversations we've been having.
How did you come up with your list, like as to who's competing with who, or were you just looking at company sizes, or what exactly?
No, so we weighed over the last 12 months how many job postings were in the Raleigh-Durham area, and then we took the companies with the most number of job postings, and these are the organizations.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Yes.
Monica, I'm surprised not to see, sorry, it's Noreen. I just want to say, I'm surprised not to see like the pharmaceuticals like Biogen. With all this COVID going on, you'd think that they'll be hiring a lot of people, right?
Well, you make a very good point. Now, the question that I always pose is, do their security teams sit here? Because when you think about the global organizations, sometimes their environments are in other areas. So that may be a reason why.
Oh, okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I like the comment from Kevin. I applied to about 25% of them in the last 2 months. So the average job posting in the Raleigh-Durham area receives over 200 applicants. And so I don't want you to feel discouraged, because oftentimes we are competing. And that's actually the benefit of using staffing organizations is you can oftentimes work specifically, we work specifically with our managers. So you're competing against a much, much smaller population, and we can help you format things a certain way to be able to get somebody's attention much easier. So I definitely recommend that. Find a recruiter that you absolutely love and stick with them.
Also, being here is great. I just put this in the chat. Like, I got my first job through networking.
Yes.
It was like, and it was actually LinkedIn. I was just posting articles and trying to start conversations about what I thought was interesting, and a recruiter found me. It was a recruiter. It was great. And since then, any job move I've made has been through networking, because I think it was Diana, to your point, I don't qualify still for a lot of job postings out there, but because I knew the hiring manager, they were so willing to like get me in for an interview. And then they could see when they talk to me that I'm like passionate and smart and willing to learn and all of that. So being here is a great opportunity. And then participating in the other local groups is also really important.
That is such a great point. And I think, I'm sorry if I messed up your name, but Lila, we're going to actually be addressing that as well, your question and your statement. So that's going to come up here shortly.
Yeah, okay. It's not a question so much as a statement, but yeah, I understand the frustration that people run into when these job descriptions are just kind of, the whole toolbox. And
it is. You are not wrong. That's something that we face every day.
So that brings an interesting question, Monica. So when you as recruiters see these jobs that are asking so much staff, right? Like maybe hiring a whole department for one specific role. Do you step back and reach out to the hiring manager and say, I understand you'd like me to find your candidate for this role, but it looks like you're hiring for a whole department. I would like us to both of us walk through what is it that you're really looking for, and revise that job description so it can better fit the candidates who are looking for the roles.
That is exactly what I do all day, every day. So when I work with my customers and I'm speaking with them about what they're hiring for, my goal is to get an understanding of what they're trying to improve in their security posture and what this person's impact is going to be. Because there may be a full gambit of skills that they're looking for on that list, but there may only be a few different job functions that this person is going to be participating in, and the others could be learned behaviors. So those are all factors that we have to take into account. And unfortunately, you're going to see this coming up, but job titles are really vague. They don't really mean a whole lot. So we have to get really granular, and it's the only way that we can make sure that people are successful and that our managers are happy with what we're providing. So it's a very great point.
Awesome. Thank you.
So our next slide here just goes through like the disparity within this space. So Liz, do you want to talk about this a little bit? Because I think that this is really important to discuss.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we look at top technical skills in the Raleigh-Durham area, you'll see the chart is broken down into different security skill sets. And then the darker line represents the frequency in job postings, and then the lighter line is the frequency in profiles. So you'll see that in pretty much every skill set, there's a larger frequency of job postings than there are profiles. But then you also see that in network security, that's the only exception. So I wanted to see if anyone might know the answer to that. If anyone knows, please speak up or write in the chat.
One thing to note as well is we put a comparison here for computer science. So that's just in general. So the number of IT opportunities to the talent. So that's just a comparison. So you can kind of view what that looks like as well. Anybody have any ideas of why the network security is the only one that's passed? Liz and I have a hypothesis behind it. And that is it, Haley. We agree, it is the most established. That is perfect. So that is a big factor, because when you think about it, security really emerged from like the separation of responsibilities between networking and security, because they have very, very different goals. And so historically speaking, the first, security engineers were in the networking space, and they were firewall engineers, and it expanded from there. Like, how do we further secure our endpoints? So that those were really just, I think, the big factors that we were able to take into account. And there are a much greater population of network security professionals locally. But I will say this, there are plenty of network security professionals as well that are looking to get into different skill sets within security. And that seems to be a tough transition for people to make. Yes, Haley, you're right. It definitely is the foundation of security. It absolutely is. And we'll talk about this more, but one of the things that we always talk about in terms of working with entry-level candidates that are moving into the space is we highly recommend that you look into being a systems administrator or a network administrator before moving into security, because it's absolutely vital for you to understand the systems that you're supporting and protecting down the line. So that's a really good way to get into the space. So the demand. So over the last few months, over the last 12 months to be specific, these are the numbers of, most common job titles that we've seen in this market. So you'll see that there are a lot of similarities among the names. And we have a few different theories and reasons why we see them pretty often. But the number one that we see here is the information security engineer title. There's about 382 of these in the last few months. I believe that that's because this is the easiest job title to search for within the security space. And oftentimes when you're thinking about HR, the HR doesn't necessarily understand the function of each individual security role. So this is the biggest classification title that we see in the local market. So oftentimes, although it's listed as an information security engineer, you can break it down even further and actually look into more of what this person's doing. So that information security engineer may actually be an incident response analyst, and we just don't know. So there's really that breakdown, and that's where the importance of understanding the job and what the top needs are within that space is really important. And that's where oftentimes we experience the gaps and when we're looking at these job descriptions. And I know there was like a statistic years ago where women weren't applying to jobs that they had 7 out of the 10 skills. And I think that oftentimes that prevents us from getting into these emerging spaces, because these job descriptions are so broad and so vast that we think we have to have all of these skills to be able to enter them, and it often bars us from opportunities. So, and keep in mind, there are some very, very similar job titles in here. So cyber threat analysts, these are the different classifications that different companies use. So that's something to note. Oftentimes when you're searching, these are the job titles that we would look for. Any questions we can answer around this?
So what's the difference between the cybersecurity analyst and threat analyst? Are they same roles or totally different roles?
So historically speaking, because I did a little research on my own and kind of looked through some job postings to see what they entailed. So they are super, super similar. What I have found is that the threat analysts and the incident response analysts typically involve a little bit more research in comparison in terms of different cyber events that they may have had in the past. So that's more of what I have seen in terms of the differential, but it is solely dependent on the company and what they're looking for. So keep that in mind. What I say here, it could be a completely different definition at Cisco versus Verizon, for example. All right.
I think the one trend that is also interesting to note, and Rena, you and I have discussed this earlier, is everything is analyst or engineer level. I don't see any higher up, managers, directors, CISO level positions, none of those in this area. Is that something that didn't just come up in your top list and that's why weren't included, or did you genuinely not see any of those?
That's a great question. So that's probably an area, a gap that we see regularly in this market. And part of the reason why is because oftentimes these roles are promoted into. So oftentimes they develop people internally and they promote them into these roles. And that's for a few different reasons. So the number one is definitely to create organizational buy-in. So when you see another one of your peers promoted into a management role, it kind of gives you hope and shows mobility within the company. But it also, it helps the company ensure that the person is going to stay long-term, right? Because you've invested in them and they're more likely to be invested in your organization. So oftentimes that's the reason why we don't see very many manager or CISO roles. Now I will say this, there are a lot more opportunities that are open to fully remote now. So Liz and I today saw 2 open CISO roles that came across from other markets within tech systems. So they are becoming more and more common, I will say. But in this market, there have been a lot of promotions into it. And that's just something that we see pretty regularly.
I think it's more common in the North Carolina area that I saw.
It definitely is. I definitely agree. I would for sure agree. All right.
All right, so I know people will definitely have questions on this, so feel free to reach out and ask questions. But essentially, these are the top certifications that we're seeing in the Raleigh-Durham area. So specifically, Monica and I do see that the most valuable out of these are probably going to be the Certified Ethical Hacker, CISA, and the CISSP. And that's just based off of the positions that we've been working on, what we've been seeing, talking to hiring managers about. But I know that there were some questions. If anyone has any now, we can definitely discuss that.
And once again, these are based off of, over the last 12 months, all of the job postings in comparison and what they required.
So quickly, is there a way to kind of, I know in NIST there's guideline, and Tish from our team talked about it, but are there like minimum certificates for like maybe a role that requires maybe 1 or 2 years experience, and more, as you advance, more different certificates are being looked at? Is there a way to divide it up, I guess?
Yeah, I can definitely help with that. So I will say the comp TIA ones are probably the best if you're entry level. So they don't require any prior years of experience. Haley said it in the chat. They do not require any prior years of experience. My boyfriend is actually in the process of reading one of those thick books right now to get his first certification. So they are massive, but they're really good to get through, and they do provide a ton of value. I recommend that because especially if you're moving into a new industry for the first time, it shows that you've invested in your career by taking the first steps. And so a lot of entry-level roles, that really pushes you ahead. If you're moving into the networking space specifically, I recommend the CCNA if you have like 1 to 2 or 1 to 3 years of experience within that space. One, because it's a base level for you to receive the rest of your Cisco certifications within the networking space, should you decide to do that, and should you decide to go after like the CCNP security, for example. So those are kind of the ones that I would say are definitely going to be the basis. I usually see that the rest of the certifications on this list are like a multi-year engagement, because some of them do require years of experience. Some of them require a certain number of like, I guess, cases or studies within that space to be assessed and things like that. I have never been through it myself, so I can't speak to the experience, but.
I'm kind of surprised I don't see the CSSLP on here.
We rarely see a need for that. I don't think I've seen that in a few years, honestly, just with my customers.
Very interesting.
I think
Well, we're here to learn today, right?
CSSP is the first one.
so. Monica, I think that, for our next presentation, when we talk about career development and ways to, continue to grow and, increase your education, knowledge, things like that, I think it would be really cool if we added like a certification pathway, like what the pathway looks like, some recommendations, and if anyone has or suggestions on what they want to hear in terms of career development, feel free to let us know, because Monica and I will be talking more about that in our next presentation.
There's one question. How is the CSUP, CYSA Plus, CSUP Plus, it's being the newer certificate? Do you see any demands of that, or how is it integrated in the job market?
I personally haven't seen that yet.
All right.
And I think it's just because it's newer. But I'll pull some data specifically on that for our next presentation. We can talk about that. So I'll make sure that we look into that a little bit more. What I've noticed is that, especially I think in this market right now, not a lot of organizations have figured out how to encompass security as well into other business units. And so I think that oftentimes there's a divide in that space, because although security is the responsibility of the entire business, especially IT, it's not often viewed that way. And oftentimes security professionals are quote unquote the bad guys that nobody wants to hear from, which is tough. You have to have thick skin to be in this space. I think that this is one of the largest questions that we get is salaries. Like, what does this look like for these professionals? So this is an average across all of the professionals within the Raleigh-Durham area of what the average is that people are making. Keep in mind, there are a few different factors to take into account. In general, our security market is pretty young. So we do have, we have a lot of really senior people in this space, which I think drives up the cost here. And we also have individuals that are really, really new to this space. And there's not a lot of people in the middle, right? There's not a lot of people in that 3 to 5 years of experience type of range. So that's one thing that I think skews the data just a little bit. And then in addition, one of the factors that we're going to see is this is going to be driven up pretty dramatically over the next few years. Liz and I are already seeing that salaries are increasing pretty dramatically in this space just because the sheer demand in this area. So oftentimes, these professionals are getting over 30 solicitations a week for opportunities if you have experience in the space. So it's going to be pretty vast in the upcoming years. And I can say on average, because I think that this is a big question that we're going to see in this market just in general, is what does it look like for entry-level professionals? Like, what should I expect? And I always think if you're going into this space for the first time, a good expectation is around that 40 to 50K range in terms of an entry-level type of salary, just depending on education and things like that. That's still an average of what we're seeing in this market. Any questions? I break it down a little bit further into this slide. So you can kind of see it by job title. So we took it based off of job descriptions and jobs in the local market. So you can see kind of the breakdown as to what the average is.
I am glad that you clarified on that last slide that the 83 that's not entry level, because that's something that I've talked to with managers before, that they get so frustrated because they have these people coming straight into the field that don't have any experience asking for like 90K, and they're like, that's unrealistic even for this field. So I'm really glad you clarified that, because I was looking at that thinking that the low was entry, and I was like, that's not right at all. So
no, it definitely is not. And I think like I mentioned, that discrepancy where we're really, really heavy on the few years of experience, just a handful of years of experience experience in this space. And then we also have people who have been doing this for 20 plus years, and there's not a lot of people in the middle. So I think that that kind of creates that gap. But you're very much right. We face it every day where people call us and they're like, hey, I want to enter the security space. I want a job making 80K. And we're like, time out. What do you have that makes you valued at 80K? And most of the time people can't answer that. And so we have to take a step back and be able to say, hey, here's how you get to that point. And we can help you get there, but here's really where you're going to be starting. And this is where your value is at this moment.
No, these are really great numbers, right? I mean, and it kind of gives you a landscape of what is kind of the perceived value here, right? Per hour or per an annum. One question, and you didn't have that much information on it, but are we seeing, and I think, are we seeing more demand or a escalating demand for cloud security engineers at all? Or is it staying within, and I know cyber includes cloud kind of in there.
Yes, I'll tell you, we've been seeing that. A lot of requests for cloud engineers, cloud security engineers, specifically to be able to help in the conditional access space. That's been really, I guess, the biggest need that we've seen there. I think that the cloud in general is something that people have a hard time getting their stakeholders bought in on because it's very ominous, right? I think that the title almost makes it more difficult for people to have buy-in on. Because, in general, a lot of organizations, IT units think, that's something that we want to move to in the future. But we see a lot of organizations locally that struggle with those conversations with leadership. But a lot of the companies that we work with are in that direction. And we've been seeing people move to that for some time. So it's definitely demand. At first, we saw it more heavy on the architect side of the house. So like the cloud architect to be able to kind of plan out these migrations. But now it's more heavy on the engineer. So more of people building the environments.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Thank you guys. This was really amazing. Thank you for allowing us to take the time to do this. We're really, really excited to be able to share more of our knowledge in this space and just some of the data to be able to help y'all grow in your careers. And we are, like I said, we're going to stick around for any questions that you have. We want to make sure that you have the ability to ask anything and everything because that's what we're here for. And we're happy to live in this space all the time.
Open to questions. Or any points that you grabbed onto and you're curious about. And we've got a lot of great comments in the chat.
Could you explain what you meant by the conditioner's shareholder stakes? I think you said something like that about the cloud engineers.
Yeah, so non-technical leaders oftentimes are more risk adverse, right? So when you think about, changing and moving away from, what you've always done, what's always been secure in your mind, moving to the cloud is almost ominous. And so oftentimes we see people say, I don't know if we're ready for that. I don't know if that's a direction we want to move in yet. Not to mention it is a pretty expensive process. And sometimes organizations don't want to invest that within the IT space. We are seeing more companies move in that direction, absolutely. But it's definitely a concern that people have. And we've been seeing it and experiencing it for a while.
Okay, thank you. I mean, it seems like a necessity at this point.
It definitely is. And like a lot of organizations are having to move to the cloud just because, the products that they use are moving there. So they just can't have that gap internally.
Definitely. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
So one quick question. Are you seeing jobs in identity access management in this area?
All day, every day. All day, every day. That's probably our biggest demand at this moment is within the IAM and the PAM space in general. And I think it's for a number of reasons. I think that people are just assessing like who has access to what more and more. Because people realize that the monitoring within that space and just the general security is not as strong as they originally thought for a number of reasons. And I think that it's becoming more and more of an issue. So I would definitely say that's the case. We hear a lot of like SailPoint and Okta these days. I don't know if you're wanting to get product specific, but those are definitely the areas to which are the products to which companies are moving more towards.
SailPoint. Actually, I'm gonna because before anybody decides to drop off, can you all turn on your cameras? I want to take a nice group picture, and we'll continue. We're not dropping off, but if you can turn on your camera, I just want to capture a good picture. If you're not, if you're okay with your hair and everything, it's okay.
Not okay with your hair, look at my hair. So
Look at my hair. It's okay. It's all good. We're in pandemic. All forgiven. All right. Yeah. Turn on your cameras, and I'm gonna try to see if I can get everybody. How do I get everybody on the page? On one page. Might have to take 2 different pictures. I think in the gallery view, right? Oh yeah, perfect. All right. I see I don't see Serena. I don't see Krishna. I don't see Haley, and I need Sarba. Are you guys okay? Oh, there. Okay. See Alyssa.
I think we have 2 pages, Reina. So you have to take, I think,
Okay, I'm
page
gonna
1. Yeah.
Smile. I'm going to take one picture. Everybody smile. And take one picture and then second one. And then I go to my second page. Perfect. All of you look beautiful. Look at those beautiful smiles. All right. Thank you very much. And all of you honestly look really good for evening.
My own hair for like a year now. My new skill I've learned.
Okay. All right. I got everybody. Thank you. We're going to continue. I just wanted to take everyone's picture.
Not to mention with questions too, like if you have any feedback for us, let us know. This is our first time doing like a full market deep dive into security with people. And Liz and I were so excited to do this. So if you have any suggestions, let us know, because hopefully we'll do this again.
Yeah, we can do round 2 and more deep dive. So one more thing, I think we talked about this. You said threat intel is growing, right? What are the, I guess, 3 top growing areas? Because let's say, network, I saw that network security and network engineers, like more people than their jobs, right? So it's to invest time into things that maybe are growing and, learn those skills. So yeah, what are the top 3, I guess?
You know what? I'm actually going to call on some of my team members here as well. Danielle, I'm going to call on you because I think that you represent more of the Greensboro market as well. But I would say probably the top that I'm seeing just in general right now, I see a lot of identity and access management, cloud, and a lot of compliance types of roles these days, which I know are not as like technical security, but there's been a lot of, I guess, more risk related roles, and that like people that interact with IT really closely or have to be technical. Those are probably the biggest areas that I'm seeing.
Definitely.
I don't know if Danielle can talk.
Okay. I actually, in the Greensboro market, I'm Danielle. I work for Texas and in the Triad. And actually, our top 3 would probably be the same. So I would say cloud security is our biggest. And then our second would be risk, so very GRC related, governance, risk, compliance. So it's not technical at all. It's actually way more functional. And then our third would be, I'd probably say tools administration. So kind of more into that cybersecurity, cyber threat. That would be our top 3.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry about that. I'm trying to change my background and I flipped myself onto the screen.
No problem. So I guess then we can talk in the resume section and talk about like some of the skill sets for top 3 area too. Can cover that a little bit more.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
I do see a message in here about entry-level jobs. And I think that is, that's a huge gap that we see. And we really still haven't figured out how to close that gap in this market. There just are so many professionals that are looking to get into this space. And oftentimes what we advise people to do is, if you don't have the ability to take internships and go through like a school program, definitely look into getting into more of like a desktop support type of role, where you can start your career that way, because the next step from there is either like a network analyst type of role or a systems analyst role, where you can kind of grow into that space more. If you can get into a monitoring role as a security professional, like from the ground up, that's really the one way that I see people get into it in terms of like entry level roles is looking at logs and reviewing logs all day. And that's probably the most security oriented role that we see. Oftentimes when you're applying to job postings, that isn't going to be the way that you end up landing your next opportunity. It's through networking. And the discrepancy is pretty great within that. So I recommend utilizing your network and asking what you can do to be competitive to certain companies and things like that, because that'll be the way that you end up moving into the space that you want to be in. And oftentimes it's uncomfortable. It's not something that people really want to do. But the more that you are able to lean on other people and be vulnerable and say, hey, listen, I'm really trying to move in this direction, the better off you'll be. And it'll really teach you how to network, not just with the people that you're connected on LinkedIn, the people that you're meeting in user groups, but also within an organization, because you want to be able to have upward mobility wherever you go, and that networking technique transfers wherever.
Wonderful. Thank you. Any other questions?
I see something here from Haley, wondering if compliance roles are increasing due to a mix of work from home, contributing extra risk, and then most employees are looking for more technical hands-on. You know what? I definitely think that a big thing within the compliance space that people are tackling is business continuity. That's been a big factor. And then also another thing to note is people are using they're on different networks now. So not everybody, unfortunately, will get into a VPN when they start their day, or open that up at all. And that's a big issue that we see. Even in our organization, it's tough because I'm like, you can't just work at Starbucks and be on their Wi-Fi. It's not as safe as you think. And that's something that people are trying to tackle now is we're at work from home, but down the line, we're going to be at work from anywhere. And so there's going to be more risks that your environments, unfortunately, are going to be exposed to as a result of that. So having to get a little bit more granular is really, really important. I think that, Galen was talking about just their phishing exercise that they do at Duke twice a year. And we're going to be seeing more compliance organizations get involved with what IT is doing from that perspective to be able to push their initiatives as well. So those are all things to really note and why we're going to be seeing an increase within that space.
I mean, even working from home, though, presents risks because how many people know that they need to change their SSID password or their admin password to their modem? Like, that's not, we take it for granted so often being in security or near security that it just seems like, oh, everybody knows how to do that. Obviously, everybody knows that you should do that. Even if they don't do it, they know that at least you should. And I don't think that's true. So.
Yes, absolutely. It was funny. I was talking to my mom the other day because she clicked on an email at her job. She's a nurse practitioner. And she was like, I keep having to go through these security trainings. They keep opening emails that are them trying to catch me doing something wrong. And I was like, that this is like where I work, right? I'm like, you can't just make me look bad like this.
Yeah, that is funny. Like a lot of my friends and family, if they get phishing emails, they'll immediately text me and be like, I didn't get caught. And I'm like, good job.
Good job.
Yeah, but this last phish we did, we apparently, so when you click the link, it takes you to a page, and we made that page scary, I guess, accidentally, because we had so many people email us saying like, I got this email and I clicked the link and it said it was phishing. And we were like, did you read further than it's a fish? So yeah, you always learn something new when you fish 38,000 people in a week. Always something new.
I can only imagine how many people reach out to you.
It was a lot. I was very tired.
It looks like somebody's microphone isn't working, so they had a question.
Yeah.
Microphone issues. I'm trying to transition into security from finance. I've taken multiple courses offered by Cisco. How can I make this transition attainable without the engineering background? Yes. So investing in boot camps and all that is a really, really tough piece that you kind of have to weigh in on what's going to be important. So 2 things to note. If you join ISSA and you go to the career services, it's run by somebody named Rob Martin, who does work out at Cisco, and he runs a lot of like free boot camps at Cisco. And he runs them on the weekends and just his spare time. He just loves investing in other people. So that's one thing I would look into as well, because it's a great networking opportunity as well. So as much as you already have taken some boot camps, or some different courses through Cisco. I think that that's really important. Also, I highly recommend, so a little plug for Wake Tech if you do have the ability, because it's fairly inexpensive for what it is, but Wake Tech has some phenomenal programs. And I say that because when I was recruiting, my big area that I specialized in was Linux and Windows, and I would pull people straight from those boot camps. And I would say, all right, you have your certification within the Microsoft space, or you have your RHCSA, and I would place them at organizations like Red Hat. And they do a great job, and their professors are super comprehensive. So I do recommend that as well. I would also look for internship opportunities. Those are often posted on company websites. And although it may be something really small and it may feel small, it gives you the exposure that you need with different teams to be able to kind of show them what you can contribute to and what you can add to their team. So those are all factors that I would take into account. Liz, is there anything that you'd want to add to that?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head with that. I think the biggest piece is just networking, making conversations with people that are, similar to you, and it goes a long way. So, and I just posted Rob's LinkedIn in the chat too, if anybody wants to connect with him. But definitely just keep joining meetup groups and continuing your education that way.
And also, it took me over a year of trying to get into security before I did. I applied to over 100 jobs in that time. I did get, if you haven't gotten Security Plus, that in my opinion is like such a stupidly important first step. I think certifications by and large can be kind of a trap, because you don't have to have experience to get Security Plus, but they like to think that you need a year of experience. But how do you get experience unless you get Security Plus? But when I was job searching, I didn't even get a nibble until I got Security Plus and had it. And then I started at least getting callbacks. It did take, and I have a master's degree in a fairly related field, and it still took over a year before I got it my first. So yeah, so it's really discouraging, and it seems like it should be so easy because there's all of these jobs available. But then we come back to the discussion, like people don't want to train. They want that unicorn that can come in and do everything, even stuff that's not in the job. And it gets so frustrating to be like that job searcher who's like, no, I know that I'm really smart and I would be really good at this if you could just give me a chance. And then definitely reach out to Rob. He's a great resource, and he's always willing to donate his time. Any of us here on the board too, which we haven't introduced ourselves yet, but we will, also willing to look over resumes or try to connect you with other people. But yeah, networking, unfortunately, entry level networking is almost the only way to get that foot in the door. So yeah, it sucks, but don't be discouraged. It's totally worth it to be in this field. It just takes a lot of perseverance to get here.
I feel bad making a plug for Rob, but I feel like I always do.
That's good. I just want to add in, Maritza, you don't have to struggle by yourself, right? When I look at my career history, when I started in the industry, it was tough for me, right? But one thing that really helped and propelled me in my career is getting a mentor. So find a mentor who can be able to advise you, coach you, and give you those career path advice. I wouldn't recommend going straight just into bootcamp because it's a lot of money. It's going to money out of your pocket and you're not earning money right now, right? So find a mentor. I would also, in addition to all the resources people have given you, feel free to join us. I run a global mentoring program that runs every other Saturday of every month. We have a lot of people, a lot of organizations, startups, managers, recruiters, directors, I mean, you name it, right? And they're there helping and reaching out. Women, how can we help you? With or without experience, because we are all in this together, right? So the old traditional way that you have to have a 4-year degree, gazillion of certifications to get a job, right? That's starting to change because the pandemic has shifted the market a little bit, just as Monica has said. So you have to try new ways and be aggressive. Don't give up, right? And for those ones who are trying to get into an entry-level position, if you see a job posting that's posted out there, hypothetically, let's say it says it requires 10, let's say 10, maybe you need to meet these 10 requirements, right? And you meet 2. Trust me, if I was looking for a job, I'll apply for that. Who knows? Maybe I may be the only one who's going to show up on that interview and they're going to ask me, why do you think you're qualified for this? I said, well, at least I can offer these 2. And the rest 8 are for me for growth. So I'm leaving space for myself for growth. I personally will never apply for a job where it says 10 requirements and I can meet all the 10. That means I'm not going to have any room for growth. So Don't shy, go for them, be confident, own it. And in every end of every interview, please ask this question. Most people, they ask, do you have any questions? Yeah, you start asking, what is about the team? What about the company? No. I hire people who ask me, what do you think during this interview has disqualified me not to get that role if you're not going to pick me? That manager, if they have decided they're going to hire you, they should be able to tell you right away, you're one of the top candidates. And if they're very sincere, they'll tell you, I would have hired you, but I would recommend you maybe work on 1, 2, 3. But that's constructive feedback that you'll never get unless you ask. So I hope you can, capture all the advices we give you. We are here to support, to help, and stay in touch.
Yeah. And everybody has a different opinion and everybody has a different path of how they got into this field. So I think, like, personally, I always recommend mentor is great. 2, 3, however many mentors you can handle to keep in touch with, even better, because they're all going to have different advice and different experience that can be valuable to you in a different way. And recruiters also, recruiters are, unfortunately, and Monica, let's disagree with me on this, they're not the like magic band-aid of like, here's my resume, go. Like, I know they probably would love to be, but they're not. And so, but they do have useful insight, as we just saw, into the industry, hiring managers, etc. So the more people you can talk to, in my opinion, the more just the better it will be for you to like find your way.
I do agree.
Networking is key. Networking is key. We always emphasize the 3 E's, right? Education, experience, and exposure. For the exposure, that's where networking keeps. Maybe I know somebody that Galen knows that I can talk, hey, Galen, Nita is looking for a job. Can you find somebody? But if there's not that interaction, then you're not going to get the job. So network, network, network.
Keep in mind too, when you're working with recruiters, if you kind of have to be patient. So sometimes especially if you have like more of an entry-level skill set, oftentimes when people call WiCyS, they're calling us because they have something that is difficult to fill. And so oftentimes with the more entry-level roles, we're not the ones that get called pretty immediately unless there's something specific that they're looking for. However, we do usually have the heads up on what's coming out. So we know, okay, well, they're going to have this internship opportunity, or they're going to be hiring a level 1 coming up, just from our consistent meetings with these hiring managers. So we can give you a heads up on that sort of stuff, but oftentimes, unfortunately, with the more entry-level skill sets, we don't see as many as we would like. Because if I would have been able to put a lot more people at an entry level to work, which is something that, Liz and I are very passionate about. But also it is important who you work with from a recruiting standpoint. So pick somebody that you really, really like and that you trust, that follows up with you. The follow-up is really, really vital. So that's my biggest point in that space, because there are some really good people and companies out there, but there also are organizations and people that are not going to have your best interest. So it's like anything else.
Agree. No, thank you. It's great advice. And yeah, and I just, one more thing I want to add. You have a finance background, so it is transferable. A lot of your skill, a lot of governance or identity access management, they go over finance system. So not necessarily you'll be an engineer, but you might enter through a different way. So I guess that's where the mentoring helps a lot, where they will talk through you, what's your background, kind of guide you through there. Again, everybody gives advice, take what you can, and you can brush off what you don't want. But that's where the mentoring really helps to kind of help you in the right direction before you even prepare for the boot camp, and really invest in what you're going to stick with and go with, right? Mm-hmm. But thank you very much. I think we are now at 7:22. So thank you very much, Monica and Alyssa. And I know you put in a lot of effort into the slides too. It was so interactive. I think thank you to everyone, I think, for making it so, I want to try to capture all the chat sessions because there's such good advice coming from everybody, as well as some good points and questions. So I was trying to like copy paste, but I'll get all to it. But thank you for participating, coming to the session. And I posted the WiCyS website link. I did want to share that with everyone. So let me post it one more time. And it has all the board member details. We'll be posting events here as well. We have some really good sources that you can access, right? as well as, I would say if you can, try to attend the mentorship sessions as well. Those are awesome. I try to attend every bi-weekly, right, when they're held, and I learn something new. And I may not be doing that job, but it's very interesting to learn, what a, dark web, what is dark web, right? What's the terminology mean? Or what does threat modeling mean? So when all these, things come up in your mind with questions, or you read something about, oh, this attack happened and this is how it happened. These sessions really help put things in perspective. It's like put a big picture, right? And you can divide things. So I think that really helps, that you can then hold good intelligent conversations during your interview, right? You can say, yes, this job entails this, but I also understand these areas, and you can kind of explain, like, I read this and this is where it fits in with the newer technology. Or you could pose good questions during your interview, right? As you're aware of it. So I think just increasing, and I think as Noreen put it, it's a journey. It's not an ending. You're constantly learning. I don't think you'll ever stop learning in this field. So be ready for that. But thank you, everyone. And I got good pictures, right, Noreen, from everybody. Good.
Yes, you did a good job, Rena.
Thank you.
Did you put the website for the people?
Yes, I just posted in the chat for everyone the website. And let me share. If I can bring it up and just showcase. It's beautiful. And Tish, who dropped off earlier for a chat session, she had, she designed this for us. So a great job from her. It has the board. It's how to join. If you know somebody who wants to join, please share the website with them so they can just basically fill out a form on the join, right? And there's a form they can fill out. So then we have them in our member list, right? So we can be communicating with them. And then we'll be posting events and today's recording as well. If you want it, just on my LinkedIn, just send me an email. I will share that with you initially till we post it on